September 20 is a trap, don't touch them. I do not speak these words as if they were born of superstition, or the restless fancies of men who fear the turning of the calendar, but because there are hours in human life when time itself is bent like a bow, and the day becomes not merely the passage of light and darkness, but a stage prepared with careful malice, ready to ensnare those who enter it without watchfulness. The ordinary man supposes that days are all alike, that one sunrise differs not from another, and that danger is something marked by signs so plain that no one could stumble into it unaware. Yet history and the very record of the soul tell another story. That peril is most potent when it hides beneath the garments of the familiar, when the hour that looks most harmless is the very hour that conceals the net. For the enemy of mankind, subtle as a craftsman weaving invisible cords, sets his snares not in the haunted forest or the lonely desert, but in the ordinary street, the common room, the shared table. He knows well that men will keep their eyes wide when walking through the valley of shadows, but they will sleep with open mouths when the sun is warm and the birds are singing, and it is then that the hunter lays down his snare. Think for a moment on how children walk into danger. A fire burns in the hearth, and a child stretches out his hand because the flame dances like a friend. He does not see destruction, only fascination, and because the ordinary world has not taught him yet that fire bites, he stumbles forward into pain. In just the same way, a day may be marked for ruin while it looks like any other. A certain date may come to you with no fanfare, no dark clouds, no trumpets of warning, but beneath its hours lies a trap, a call to act, to touch, to reach out towards something that promises delight or harmless curiosity. And men, like children before the hearth, may stretch out their hands, unaware that the fire concealed in that moment burns deeper than flesh. This is how the snares of time are set, not in days painted black, but in days painted with the color of safety. September 20 stands before us clothed in the garments of ordinary life, but I tell you it has been dressed by cunning hands, and the one who touches what is forbidden on that day will awaken not to satisfaction but to sorrow. Why is it so? Because evil is old, patient, and strategic. It knows that men despise what is too obvious, so it hides the sting in sweetness, the poison in the cup of comfort, the snare in the path of routine. Think of the hunter in the forest. He does not set his trap in the open clearing, where every passerby might laugh at the crude design. He sets it along the trail where deer walk every evening, where the familiar scent and the trodden path lull them into safety. The hoof strikes what looks like earth, and suddenly the beast is caught. So it is with men. The snare lies along the road of habit. That is why the very hour that seems predictable may be the most dangerous. September 20 is such an hour, an appointed season, not because the stars decree it nor because the earth itself trembles, but because the hidden adversary has marked it as a pathway where many shall walk without suspicion. And how does one stumble into the trap? Not by malice but by presumption. When men say, "All days are the same, what can this day bring?" they open their gates. They touch what they ought not to touch. They lean close to the object that calls to them, saying, "Surely nothing will come of it." But the net is spread beneath. Recall how the ancient tales speak of fruit hanging upon a tree, fair to the eyes, delightful to the taste. It was not the thorn or the serpent's fangs that first destroyed, but the beauty of what seemed harmless. So the snare of September 20 does not lie in threats or terrors. It lies in allure, in the invitation to treat lightly that which is marked heavy, to caress the forbidden as though it were a toy. Men will find themselves whispering, "Just this once," or "Surely it is nothing." That whisper is the sound of the trap's hinge closing. You may say to yourself, "How can a day bear such weight? Is not time a flow, without personality, without moral quality?" But even the most hardened skeptic knows that not all days are alike. There are days that break a man forever, though he thought them to be ordinary mornings. There are days that crown him with glory, though he awoke thinking them dull. The battlefield has its hour when the trumpet sounds. The lover has his hour when the door opens, The traitor has his hour when the coin is placed in his palm. These hours carry the weight of eternity, though they last but a fleeting moment. September 20 is of that kind. It is prepared as a crossroad, where the soul must choose whether to step with eyes open or to stumble with eyes shut. Those who touch, who yield, who enter without watchfulness, will find themselves caught in cords they cannot easily break. Consider further how men laugh at warnings. They say, "Do not be so dramatic. The sun will rise as it always has, and the evening will come as it always does." But the mocking of the careless does not dissolve the snares of the cunning. The deer may laugh if it could, seeing another caught in the hunter's net, until its own hoof treads the same path. Warnings seem foolish until the trap snaps shut. And is it not the very design of the trap to appear harmless? If September 20 came to us cloaked in black storm, thunder rolling and the heavens declaring danger, then men would arm themselves. But because it comes in silence, in ordinary colors, they dismiss it. That dismissal is itself the bait. For when vigilance sleeps, the snare springs. We are not dealing with shadows or empty fears, but with the very laws of the soul. The heart of man is drawn to touch, to test, to step close to the line. Tell him do not, and he hears, try. For this reason the warning must be sharp. September 20 is a trap. Do not touch them. The danger lies not in thunder, but in curiosity, not in force, but in invitation. The hand will reach before the mind has reasoned, unless the soul is guarded with watchfulness. This is why the admonition must be repeated, why the voice must sound again and again like a watchman upon the wall: do not touch, do not step, do not yield. For the ordinary day is not ordinary, and the harmless object is not harmless. The snare is real, though the eye cannot see it. The subtle invitation of forbidden things, clothed in innocence, yet carrying the sting of destruction, is older than the memory of man and deeper than the record of our history. It is not merely that evil comes to us with horns and claws, for then we should run from it with terror. It comes instead with a gentle smile, a fragrance sweet, a voice tender, a shape familiar, and in that very sweetness lies its power. The snare of September 20 is not that it shouts, it whispers. It does not strike men down with swords. It lulls them into laying down their guard. The forbidden thing does not appear to us dressed in rags of horror, but clothed in garments of innocence, like a lamb that hides the wolf within. To touch it seems harmless, to draw near feels natural, yet within it lies the sting that pierces more cruelly than steel. Think of how a man falls not through what he hates but through what he admires. He admires beauty, but beauty twisted becomes lust. He admires strength, but strength twisted becomes tyranny. He admires knowledge, but knowledge twisted becomes pride. The enemy of mankind is no fool. He knows that men are not drawn to naked ugliness, but to corrupted loveliness. A fruit glistening with dew, pleasing to the eye, promising wisdom. This is enough to topple an empire of innocence. The danger of September 20 is not that it offers horror, but that it offers delight. A thing will be placed before men that seems good, or at least harmless. A door will open, and beyond it will appear a treasure, a friendship, a pleasure, a secret, or an opportunity. The hand will twitch to reach, the heart will quicken with desire, and the whisper will come, almost inaudible, touch it. There is no harm. Others do it. You deserve this. That whisper is older than the mountains, and yet new as the breath in your lungs. It is the whisper that has ruined kingdoms, broken vows, and silenced songs. We must remember that the forbidden does not always wear the sign, danger, upon its brow. More often it wears the sign, freedom. When men hear the word, forbidden, they think of cruelty, of harsh masters denying them joy. But when the veil is lifted, they see that the forbidden thing was forbidden, not to steal delight, but to protect it. A lock upon a gate is not placed there to keep the owner from joy, but to keep the thief from entering. Yet the human heart, restless and suspicious, imagines that the lock is tyranny. So it rattles the bars, presses against the fence, and stretches its hand toward what lies beyond. This is the snare. September 20 will bring before many a lock, a fence, a clear voice that says, not this. and the temptation will rise, as it always has, to say, "Why not me? Why not now?" That question is the serpent coiled in the grass. For once the hand moves to touch, the sting is unleashed, and it is too late to undo. The subtlety of the invitation is this: it appeals not to your hatred of the good, but to your love of it. It shows you something sweet, but laced with poison. It shows you something beautiful, but bent just enough to lead you astray. It shows you something noble, but promises it in the wrong way, at the wrong time, for the wrong purpose. It whispers that the boundary is small, that the rule is narrow, that the command is unnecessary. Why should you be denied? It says. Why should you be the one to resist? And so the soul bends its ear. The moment the ear bends, the net is already tightening. For the very act of listening gives power to the whisper, and the whisper, once received, grows louder than the voice of truth. On September 20, the whisper will not sound like evil. It will sound like reason, like opportunity, like fairness. That is why it is deadly. Do we not see this in every tragedy that has fallen upon man? Rarely does a soldier betray his post because he longed to be a villain. He betrays because he longed for comfort or silver or recognition. Rarely does a woman abandon her vows because she despised fidelity. She abandons because she longed for affection or excitement or freedom. Rarely does a nation collapse because it adored cruelty. It collapses because it adored wealth or strength or progress, and in adoring, it swallowed the poison of pride. The forbidden things always come to us clothed in the appearance of the good. That is why they are traps. The teeth are hidden in the kiss. The chain is hidden in the promise of wings. The sting of September 20 lies in the same disguise. Men will think themselves wise, strong, bold, adventurous. They will think themselves seizing joy, when in truth joy is slipping from their grasp. Imagine the moth circling the flame. The flame is beautiful. It is warm, radiant golden. The moth does not say, "I will fly into death." It says, "I will fly into wonder." And yet the wonder burns. The moth perishes not because it hated life, but because it loved light in the wrong way. So it will be with those who, on September 20, draw too near to the glow of forbidden fire. They will say to themselves, "How can this be wrong when it is so fair?" They will not see that fairness can be the mask of ruin. They will not see until the flame has consumed them. And the tragedy is not that they lacked desire for beauty, but that their desire was missiled. This is the heart of every snare. It takes what is noble in man and turns it upon him. It takes his hunger for joy and leads him to ashes. It takes his thirst for knowledge and leads him to pride. It takes his longing for love and leads him to betrayal. The forbidden is always a counterfeit coin, gleaming as if it were gold but heavy with loss. The call, therefore, is not merely to avoid the ugly, but to discern the counterfeit of the beautiful. It is easy to shun what is foul, but it is perilous to discern what is false beneath a lovely face. This is why the day itself has been marked as a snare, because the forbidden thing it offers is not grotesque but attractive. To resist, therefore, requires not only strength of will but clarity of sight. One must see beyond the shine, beyond the sweetness, beyond the seeming innocence, to the sting that waits within. For the sting is certain, though it delays. The serpent's bite may not be felt until hours or days later, but when it comes it spreads its venom deep. So too, the sting of September 20 may not reveal itself at once. The hand may touch, the lips may taste, and nothing may seem amiss. The heart may even rejoice, saying, "See, no harm has come." But the venom is already moving, slow, unseen, inevitable. By the time the soul awakens to its presence, the chain has already tightened, and the sorrow cannot be easily undone. It is not fear that I would place in your heart, but vigilance. For fear cowers in the dark and shrinks from every shadow, while vigilance walks in the light and discerns where the shadow hides. The forbidden must not be toyed with. It is not a puzzle to solve, not a game to play, not a test of courage. It is a fire that burns the one who strokes it, a snare that closes upon the one who tests its strength. If you hear the whisper on that day, remember that its sweetness is a mask. If you see the glow, remember that it is flame. If you feel the draw, remember that it is a pull toward ruin. For the forbidden may dress itself as freedom, but it is slavery. It may call itself joy, but it is grief. It may look like life, but it is death in disguise. The summons to discernment to test the spirit of the hour, and to guard one's steps when the day itself feels set as a snare, is not a counsel of timidity, but a call to true courage. For discernment is not the coward's trembling refusal to live. It is the warrior's steady gaze that refuses to be deceived. The snare of September 20 lies not only in its hidden teeth and its disguised sweetness, but in the blindness of those who walk unexamined. The hour itself carries a weight, and only the soul that has trained its eyes to see beyond appearances will walk safely. For the enemy knows that men stumble most easily not because they are weak, but because they are unwatchful. He is content to let them keep their strength, their intelligence, their wit, so long as he can lull them into carelessness. Once they believe that every hour is alike, that no moment requires vigilance, he has already wound the net about their feet. To discern is to see not merely with the eyes of flesh, but with the eyes of the heart. It is to look at what appears ordinary and ask, what spirit moves here? What hand is at work? What weight is hidden in the hour? The man who has discernment may walk into the same room as another, yet what one sees as harmless he sees as charged with peril. Not because he is fanciful, but because he has learned that the world is layered. The surface and the depth, the visible and the invisible, the sound and the echo. He knows that a whisper can carry more danger than a shout, that a smile can hide more treachery than a scowl. September 20 will come clothed in the garments of ordinary time, but the discerning soul will sense the tension in the air, the faint scent of bait, the unease in the silence. That sense is not paranoia but wisdom, for the spirit of the hour will betray its own design, if only one is willing to test it. And how does one test the spirit of an hour? Not by trusting one's impulses, for the impulse is easily stirred. Not by trusting the crowd, for the crowd is often blind. Not by trusting convenience, for convenience is the favorite disguise of ruin. One tests the spirit by weighing it against truth that does not shift with the day, by holding it up to the light that does not flicker with passing shadows. If the spirit of the hour whispers urgency, saying, "Do this now or be lost," discernment asks whether truth ever speaks in panic. If the spirit of the hour whispers indulgence, saying, "This one step will not matter," discernment asks whether truth ever diminishes the weight of a single choice. If the spirit of the hour whispers pride, saying, "You see more clearly than all others," discernment asks whether truth ever flatters the ego. By these tests the mask is torn, and what seemed harmless reveals its fangs. This is the vigilance needed on September 20, when the very air will murmur with persuasion, and the ordinary moment will beckon with unholy charm. Guarding one's steps requires more than suspicion. It requires resolve. For to discern the snare but still walk into it is worse than blindness. The man who sees and yet touches, who knows and yet yields, binds his chains with his own hands. Therefore discernment must be wedded to obedience. To see that the fire burns and yet to stroke the flame is folly. To know that the cup is poisoned and yet to drink is madness. The call is not merely to perceive but to refrain, to step back, to keep the hand from touching. And here lies the heart of the struggle, for restraint feels like loss in the moment. To deny oneself the touch of what glitters feels like deprivation, though in truth it is preservation. To refuse the whisper's invitation feels like missing joy, though in truth it is guarding joy. The discerning man must carry in his heart the knowledge that what he refuses now is not withheld forever, but exchanged for something better, cleaner, eternal. Without this conviction, he will falter, for the temptation will seem too slight to matter, too sweet to resist. Only the soul convinced that safety is sweeter than thrill will stand when the snare is laid across his path. And what is guarding if not the art of walking awake? Too many walk through their days as though asleep, their eyes glazed, their minds dulled, their steps automatic. They touch what is placed before them without question, they speak words without thought, they follow crowds without reflection. Such men are easy prey, not because they are wicked, but because they are unaware. The summons of September 20 is therefore a call to awaken, to shake off the stupor, to walk with eyes open. Every step must be weighed, every offer examined, every whisper tested. This is not the paralysis of fear, but the alertness of the watchman on the wall, who knows that though the fields lie quiet, the enemy may be approaching in silence. The wise do not sleep upon the wall, nor do they leave the gate unguarded because the night is calm. They know that calmness is often the cloak of ambush. So too must the soul keep its watch, even when all appears harmless. Discernment, then, is not a gift for the rare few, but a duty for all who would walk safely. It is not the province of mystics or prophets only, but of every man and woman who must navigate the snares of life. Each is given the faculty to test, to question, to measure, but too often they lay it aside, preferring ease to vigilance. Yet the ease of blindness is short, and the pain of folly is long. September 20 will expose this truth. Those who prefer ease will drift into the trap, their hands full of what they thought was treasure. Those who prefer vigilance will turn aside, their hands empty but their hearts preserved. And the difference between them will not be that one faced danger and the other did not, but that one tested the spirit of the hour and the other did not. There is another layer to this summons, the guarding of not only one's own steps but the steps of others. For men do not walk alone. A careless choice can entangle a friend, a reckless word can mislead a child, a foolish indulgence can embolden a crowd. The trap of September 20 will not ensnare individuals only, it will ensnare groups, communities, families, if vigilance is not shared. The discerning soul must therefore not only guard himself, but sound the warning. To walk in silence while others stumble is betrayal. The watchman who sees the enemy and says nothing is as guilty as the invader. So the call to discernment is also the call to courage in speech, to say, do not touch, do not go, do not yield. The voice may be mocked, dismissed, scorned. Yet it is better to be mocked for warning than to be silent while ruin spreads. In this way vigilance becomes not only self-preservation, but an act of love, a shield extended over those too weak or too blind to see for themselves. This is why the summons to discernment is urgent. The day is already marked. The snare is already set. The whisper is already prepared. To wait until the hour strikes is folly, for discernment must be trained before the moment arrives. A soldier does not learn his skill upon the battlefield, but in the long hours of practice. A sailor does not study the stars only when the storm begins, but long before. So the soul must sharpen its sight now, must practice testing the spirit in the small hours, must guard its steps in the little choices, that when September 20 arrives clothed in ordinary colors, the eyes will already be trained to see the shadow beneath. Those who wait until the trap is sprung will not stand. Only those already awake will know how to step aside. The hour will reveal who has walked watchful, and who has walked asleep, who has kept the lamp trimmed, and who has let it flicker, who has tested the whisper and who has swallowed it whole. Therefore the call is not to fear the day but to walk armed. Not armed with swords of iron. For the snare is not made of flesh, but armed with clarity, with patience, with humility, with courage. To be armed with clarity is to know the difference between what shines and what is true. To be armed with patience is to refuse the urgency of the whisper, to wait for the hour that is truly appointed. To be armed with humility is to distrust one's own impulses, to admit that the heart is easily deceived. To be armed with courage is to choose the narrow path though the crowd laughs, to walk away from the glittering bait though the desire screams. This armor is not heavy, yet it is the only safeguard. Without it, the hour will devour. With it, the hour will pass, and the snare will close on empty air. The summons to discernment is in truth the summons to life itself. For life is not the careless drifting from one day to another, but the careful walking of a pilgrim on a road that is both beautiful and perilous. Every step matters, every hour has weight, every choice echoes beyond itself. To imagine that days are mere accidents is to hand oneself to the hunter. To walk with discernment is to reclaim the dignity of being more than prey. September 20 may be a trap, but it is also a test. It will reveal not only the cunning of the enemy, but the vigilance of the soul. Those who pass unscathed will not be those who were lucky, but those who were watchful. They will not boast in their cleverness, but in the wisdom of having walked awake. And though the trap lies ready, it is powerless against those who have learned the art of seeing, the strength of refusing, the courage of warning, the endurance of standing.